Okay, this is a SIG 320. I do have it fixed. Got to drop the magazine to break it down, but I do have it fixed. And I had to go through quite a bit of cleaning, and a couple of parts were installed wrong. But it's back together now. And I thought, I wanted to make a video because if you own one of these, I can help you to not have to pay somebody to work on it or clean it. Or you can bring it to me, either way. And I'm going to pull this takedown out, and then I'm going to take just about anything. You just want to be gentle and just pull up slightly on the front of that chassis, and it'll come up and out, and you pretty much got everything you need to clean the lower of the gun now. I guess you could take the magazine release out and stuff, but I think you can just spray that out. All right, now the problem is if you oil this a lot and it gets a lot of dirt, gunpowder residue, carbon, things like that in it, range stuff in there, it's like a frying pan. If you don't wash it and leave it out over the weekend, it's impossible to clean it and scrub it out. But if you take that pot, as soon as you're done cooking, it's easy to clean. So the more frequent you spray this out, it's like a sandwich of parts from left to right, and these cracks between everything get full, especially right here behind this trigger shoe part here, that lever, all behind here, all behind, and these little cracks, some of these little cracks, and in between each one of these parts, which is the sear and the safety and all that stuff, gets really bad. Also on the top end, you want to pop this cap off and spray. You want to spray all this stuff with some kind of cleaner that's just a gentle solvent. This stuff, you can practically drink it, and just spray it all down and let it have its chemical reaction. Let that solvent just sort of loosen everything up for a while. May even come back and spray that again. Let it sit, and then come back with something like this a gun spray or this non-chlorine brake cleaner from Walmart, $3 a can. This stuff is great. I wouldn't put it on wood finished guns, but anything like this internal, as long as you take it outside and spray it, it does a real good job of knocking all that out of there. And pretty much you just pop it back in. Now, if you've waited too long, you got to go a little bit further. Let me show you what I had to do to this one. So I'm going to take a few parts out, and you could go a couple different orders here. There's a little pin here that limits the travel of the trigger. I'm going to go ahead and take it out just because I'm looking at it. That's it. I'll take that out. And I'm going to flip it over to the right side, and I'm going to start taking the trigger bar off. I'm going to take this spring and just turn it a little. There's a little hook that goes through that trigger bar part. I'm just going to turn it this way and push it out. Okay, shouldn't be too hard. Just don't be too rough with it. If you find that this spring is bent, replace it. Okay, might be a good idea to order some parts before you start messing with it, some springs and stuff. But anyway, I'm going to take this trigger bar out, and you see it kind of sits in this little spot there where it works these parts forward and back. Okay, sits in that little slot there. So we're just going to lift it up. Nothing gets screwed up when you do that. And then you'll see that this is captive. You can't take it out until you push it all the way forward. And as soon as you do, you see where this is pivoting on that. As soon as you do, it allows it to come out the right side and releases that. So now we've got, 4 parts out of here, and it's starting to unclutter. You're going to see a bunch of dirt and gook right there. Oh, man. And so then I'm going to take this bar off the left side, and pretty straightforward. What you're going to do is, before I do that, I'm going to take this slide stop out. See, it's spring loaded. You don't want to lose this little spring and button that's keeping tension on it. So put your finger here, and then you're going to push out from the right side this pin, and you'll see that you can just grab it and move it, and then turn it over so you don't lose everything. Just lift it right off of there, and you'll see there's that little spring, and there's that. If you want to know if something's metal or plastic, just tap it on your tooth, and not hard, and you can tell right away that's plastic. That's a polymer little button. So I've got everything where I won't lose it or drag it off the bench. And then now just this one thing that's left. This is a bar, and there's a little arm that goes in, and it's being held this way by a spring here. You want to be a little bit gentle. Now this end is just floating here. It's just floating here, and it comes down, it goes, takes a turn, and it kind of hides under here. And nothing's holding this. But we did have to take that pin out, which threads through it, that would get in the way. All right, so what we're going to do is I want to push it this way toward the rear of the gun, that way, and then I'm just going to push the back of it my way and the front of it down toward the bench, and that should come out. It's a little bit stubborn because it's trying to catch down here, but it comes right out, and you've got that bar. So you're going to find tons of dirt and crud to clean off here. This is really as far as you got to go. Now, this one was so dirty that I had to knock the safety and sear pin out, pushing them from the right side of the gun to the left. You can see you can push them, they start to come out. Yeah, but I'm going to push them back in because I don't want to take these center parts back out. There's two springs here, sear springs, that have to be perfectly in these little channels, and they're real easy to lose. You'll be spending hours on the floor. And there's a spring in here, and I just want to make sure and spray in there that that's all cleaned out and that feels like it's operating real good. Once I clean everything up and I've got these parts, the safety and the sear feel real smooth and clean, and there's nothing between here. I can shine a light from below and tell. And I'm not going to drive this roll pin out. You could, but then you start having to replace roll pins after a while, and I don't want to loosen that up or mushroom that out, so I'm going to leave that alone. So this is that next level down you would tear it down to. I don't think you necessarily have to if you just clean it more often. Now we're going to put it back together. There's this little leg there that goes in behind the spring, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread this behind and then lay it up over, and then I'm going to set that little, get that little part right there on the end of that spring, and then I'm going to take this little, I love these little screwdrivers, I'm just going to push it up and then let it go in there, and then the more I can push it this way, try that again. I want to be, I could force it, but I want to be more gentle on that spring. All right. I want the springs to last. Okay. So I'm in there, and it pops right in. Now, here you can see it's trying to go down that way a little bit, so I don't want to be rough on it, but I want to push it and get it positioned to where it is sort of loose on this end. See it's kind of floating, and it's all fitting loose down in here, but it's pushed down tightly in there. It's loaded by that spring, and you can see that it presses on that sear pin. It keeps it retained, and that's flat. That's the way I want it. Now I will, I could go ahead and put the slide stop in. Let me go ahead and do that. So I'll take it and I'll turn it upside down so it's open like this. Then I'm going to take this little knob and put it in there. And then I'm going to hold that. You see these little notches right there? That's right where these handles go. And we're just going to set it down on there and then hold it, flip it over. There, it's sitting there. I'm going to take this fat pin, put it in right here, and then let it go to the other side and slip into place. Got to find the alignment. There, boom, it's flush. Okay, so now I've got my, and I can feel it's in there real free and snappy. Now, next thing, last couple things is the trigger bar and trigger shoe. So first, remember I had to have this all the way forward, so I'll put it forward so it'll slip in there, but I'm not going to let it come all the way down. I'm going to take this trigger bar, and with this toward the center of the gun, this bar, this fat bar, toward the center of the gun, I'm going to align that hole there. Now you can see all the little cracks and crannies that collect dirt on this. All of that had to be cleaned, scrubbed out. All right, now I'm just going to get this trigger to go straight down, and you can see it went flush on the other side here, and then this is captive there. And as long as I bring this back it should lock it all in, which it does. Now it won't come out. I go back to the rear, oops, without letting the trigger go, and then I let this little fat part go back down in that little trough. Now I'm ready for the trigger return spring. So it's going to go in here like this into that little hole. See it? And then it's going to come around. And some people use tools. I don't really want to. I want to be more gentle. So I'm going to grab a hold of this and turn it this way, and then just use my thumbnail and find that spot to get in there and see how I went in and straightened it back up. I'm done. Now, last piece, and I see it because it's just laying there, is there's this little pin that keeps the trigger from going over traveling. I'm going to drop it back in there. And that's also where, when you adjust that little screw there and you adjust it in, it will limit how far the trigger can travel. And you're going to see why that's really important. That's one of the calibrations I made when I fixed the gun. All right, but I've got this in there, and you can see that I've got now instead of it sticking and sluggish, it's real crisp and smooth and bouncy. Everything's really clean. Okay, I'm gonna put it back together. Tip of the trigger is gonna just touch on that lip, and I'm gonna bring it down and then push it into the back and then down, and it's gotta snap in there. There's a little snap in that happens. If you don't do that, you won't get this back in. Now I'm going to take and find the flat spot of this, and it's going to go down to the rear at about 4 o'clock position on the clock, and then it'll go through. And it's pressing off that black bar, the end of that black bar. That's what's making it difficult. It's supposed to be. But I want to be careful not to scratch the gun with this, so I'm going to push down and kind of work it in there. It needs to be pushed down against that part a little bit, and it's just being stubborn. What I'll do is I'll get this back in there, but I don't want it to rub the gun. I'm trying to be careful not to scratch the gun, and I'm making this harder than it really is. Okay, so now see, I'm going to make sure that's up far enough to go into that groove, and then this should find its way. There you go. I'm ready, and now I'm all set. Now I could slide this off, and I've already cleaned up the up the top end, and now I'm going to be back together. And you'll notice that by adjusting this, now to do this right, I had to take the gun apart, put it back together, take it apart, put it back together. What I'm looking for is that this is the pre-travel coming up to the wall. And then I'm going to measure how far it takes to get through that transition. Slowly. And then when it snaps, do I have to go any further? No. See, it's on the back wall or the post travel. There's no post travel. So this is adjusted right. Now, one of the ways that I'll check that to make sure I didn't go too far is I'll snap it again, but I'll press the slide down hard. And that closes or gives you more overlap on the sear because of the slop in the slide. And by pushing down on that, if it still fires, I didn't bring the over travel adjustment too far. Okay, so it's going to be reliable. Now, what I'll do is I'll check the reset. Let me go slow. As soon as it clicks, see, it barely clicked. Now I want to push back. How far do I have to go to get back on the wall? That's over travel, none. So I checked my pre-travel, my post-travel, my over-travel, my everything about the trigger, the brake. It's all function checking just right. And look how crisp it resets now. And I can get on it, and how smooth it brakes. And that's it. It's working properly now. So get that done to your gun. It's going to shoot a lot better. You're going to feel the qualities of the trigger are going to be quite a bit better, and the trigger is going to be more responsive. I'll see you later.